It is now 6 o'clock. I call this meeting to order. If everyone would stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Even though there are only 3 trustees present, during the roll call, you will see that the other trustees are with us via conference call, so we do have a quorum. Roll call.
Mr. Batolo?
Here.
Mr. Hay?
Here.
Mr. Jackman?
Here.
Mr. Mickelson?
Here.
Mr. Reedy?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson? Here. Chairman Jellicoe?
Here. As I said earlier, we're going to slow down the process for the motions and the seconds so that we can make sure that we have a record of them accurately. So I'm entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. We do have an addendum, so I would entertain a motion for the addendum.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Jackman makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Item number 3, financial update presentation. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent McGovern. I'd like to direct your attention to the fiscal projection for the budget update. And it's in the same format that you've seen before. So the top half are the revenues. The bottom half are the expenditures. Working from left to right, the first column is the current budget year. The next column in is next year's budget, and so on and so forth. I'd like to direct your attention to the very, very bottom, that skinny series of boxes there. So in year 1, that's our current year budget, and of course we're balanced. For year 2, we're showing an excess of a little over 570 some thousand. In year 2, we're in the hole about 2.6 and then 4.5 in the following year. So what I'd like to do is go through the column for next budget year and kind of explain where my projections are coming from. The first one is the ADMs, and the important takeaway for this is that, and it has to do with the adaptive learning plan, that we're supposed to submit that to the state this week. And if we follow that plan that they've assured us that we would still receive full funding for our ADMs. And so, if we do what we say we're going to do, then we should be all right. Next down, there's a part for the ECA, which is the external cost adjustment. And in total, it was about 850 thousand. So there's a component for professional labor, non-professional labor, educational materials, and also energy. Also through the legislature, there was an increase for the health insurance. And this one's a little tricky because even the state at this time doesn't really know what the calculation is going to be. But I talked to the state and I took my best estimate for what that number is. The next item, transportation. That one is not capped this year. It was in previous years, but not this year. The next item under that, special education, that one is still capped. So they did not lift that one at this time. I'd like to jump down to the expenditure side. I've updated some of my numbers since you've seen this the first part of January, middle of January. There are a couple items I'd like to point out. One is the staff compensation component of a little over $1 million. And that's made up of about 400,000 for new positions that we are going to need throughout the district. And what you'll more than likely see is we're needing more positions at the high school and fewer at the elementaries. And that's kind of been our story the past couple of years as well. There's about 250,000 in there for the administrative salary schedule update, and about 400,000 for the third step of the frozen, or the third year of the frozen steps. So if you look down to the bottom, that number includes all three of the frozen steps, even though later on we're going to ask for 2. And that part of that reason is, everything is really still up in the air and it changes day by day quite so fast. But the amount that we have set aside now, that 1.65, that is enough to grant a step and the 2 frozen years in and of itself. So we could do that without any new money. So that's why it's 2 instead of 3 at this time. I'd like to jump to the next column. Through the legislature, they put in half of the external cost adjustment. So that was a reduction. And so it makes the deficit a little bit larger than the previous year. I'm not exactly sure what the rationale was for that, other than to balance our biennium budget. But that's also a recalibration year. And so there'll be a lot of work to do this upcoming year for recalibration. And, we're hoping that it comes out good for us and the other 47 school districts. May I field any questions?
Mr. Jackman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott, Mr. Duncan, is there a specific category, just broad category, that we spend, a significant different percentage on than other districts in the state that you are aware of? I know it's kind of hard because every district calculates it differently, but
I haven't looked at ours comparatively to a lot of the other ones, but generally speaking, most of the budgets for all of the districts across the state are in the salary and the benefit piece.
okay.
What is our percentage at right now? Is it still about 80%?
Pretty close. If I remember, it should be in the neighborhood of 85%, possibly by the time you get the benefits in there.
For salary and benefits?
For salary and benefits.
Any other questions for Mr. Duncan? Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item number 4, which is the communications and correspondence. The public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. We have received, as of 5:30 tonight, some comments, so I am going to read those comments. And if there are questions, we will attempt to answer those questions as well. The first submitter was Mark Cholak, Sweetwater Education Association, and his statement. SEA would like to publicly thank the district administration for the leadership they have shown during this peculiar and stressful time. Administration from the very top down have been at the forefront of implementing a functional plan of attack to confront the new realities of this unique time in history. SEA appreciates these efforts to make sure school continues and that students are still able to learn from home. We offer whatever help our district may need at this time to make this period go as smoothly as possible. The second comment is from Janae Cholak, who is a staff member. Her statement: I honestly appreciate the administration's efforts to compensate our staff by honoring our salary schedule and restoring the frozen steps. I also feel that the retention incentive will positively impact our ability to hold on to staff. Thank you. The third comment is from Leslie Whitaker, who is a parent. Her statement: thank you to all district employees for all your hard work. Also, if there are any updates on graduation, it would be greatly appreciated. Superintendent McGovern, would you like to address that?
Sure. Just a follow-up on graduation. We're getting lots of questions about that. Graduation, as of right now, is currently on track that it was scheduled at the beginning of the school year. So, for example, for Rock Springs High School, it is scheduled for 6 o'clock on, I believe, Monday, May 22nd. We're still holding those dates and planning for that event at this time. But should anything change, we'll make sure that we notify our staff and our parents as soon as possible. We know we're in a difficult time frame right now, but for right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern. And with that, we keep that on schedule until we announce differently.
Thank you. The fourth comment is from Jessica Wheeler, who is the parent of a student at Walnut Elementary School. Her statement: I've been seeing a lot of parents asking this question in press conferences that the governor holds and in other places as well online. The question that I want to know is, are we staying closed per each order that the governor expands, or are you guys thinking about leaving the school closed for the rest of the school year and just doing remote schooling because of everything going on? Again, Superintendent McGovern, would you like to address that?
Sure. To answer that question, the unique answer for that is really twofold. With that recommendation to close schools, it really comes from two parts. In this situation, it's not a snow day that we're dealing with. Snow days are recommendations that would come from myself as your superintendent to our Board of Education. In this pandemic, we are dealing with a time that is unprecedented than we've ever had before. And so that twofold process for that really begins with Governor Gordon and his recommendation. And the second piece to that is really with the State Department of Health, Dr. Harris, and her recommendation for the safety of the state. And so during this time, the recommendations come from both of them. And so our district will follow those recommendations for school closures, as well as the guidelines for the Centers of Disease Control for keeping our students and our staff safe during this time, and kiddos at home.
Thank you. The next submission was by Megan Jensen, and her statement: first of all, thank you for all the working as hard and as efficient as you all have. It hasn't gone unnoticed, and it will not be forgotten. Sincere gratitude to you all. Forgive me if I've missed any information on this. I'm wondering if staff and administration could provide more information to students about mental health, like promoting Safe to Tell district-wide, or even possibly consider having mental health professionals more visible to the students. Again, if you're already on it and I missed it, thank you again. Superintendent McGovern?
Sure. First, on that question of mental health, we appreciate that question coming forward. If we have a student in the district that is currently receiving counseling or mental health supports with one of our social workers, their service provider will be reaching out to that student so that they connect with them one-on-one. At any point, if any of our parents in the community see social isolation and the effects of this with their child, or they hear it, see it on virtual with a family member, please reach out to myself or a building principal or the school counselor at each one of our schools. We're happy to help in this time. We know that it's going to be very difficult for our kiddos as well as our staff. We're trying to work from home as much as we can, but we know one of the benefits that our kids need, and so do our staff, and that's the interaction with one another. And so if at any point, I strongly encourage people to reach out to those folks that are specialized in that area, and we are more than willing to help. And then one other follow-up on that, a lot of our schools are sending out activities that encourage school spirit, and they encourage people to come together, although virtually. I encourage you to do that. It helps kind of break the screen time that we have with everybody. but also keeps people in a good mental safe place. So supports are here for you. Please feel welcome to utilize them.
Thank you. The next comment is made by Stephanie Bernatus. Why are PE teachers telling kids to go outside and walk their dogs or play basketball? Isn't that defeating the purpose of being in isolation? To me, a kid will seek a friend outside, and I won't allow my son outside alone with my animals. In this situation, please advise them to encourage YouTube exercises to help with activities, please.
It's up to you.
Go ahead, and
Okay.
I'm going to add something afterwards. So.
Okay. This question actually is another great question that we've got. One of the guidelines that we follow from the Centers of Disease Control and also on a national level is social distancing and then groups of no more than 10. However, if a parent chooses to have their child go outside is totally under the discretion as a parent or a guardian. However, when they do go outside, if the parent chooses and they are within the family that they habitate with, and they stay within their group, the fresh air sometimes does do some good for everybody. The one thing that we would discourage is for students to go on our playgrounds during this time. And we know that they're a great place to play, but this circumstance is really a little bit different. And we just can't guarantee who's been playing on there before, and we have no way to keep that clean. And so that would be my guidance for staying away from playgrounds, but going outside for a walk and some fresh air, as long as that's in a safe way, I think that's a good thing for mental health.
And I would add, having just heard some comments nationwide, there are actually some larger cities that are taking the nets down for basketball courts and so forth, because it's virtually impossible to have a pickup basketball game and maintain the social distancing. So they're actually taking some of those baskets down. I would reiterate that we want to make sure that our children, our families, our community stay safe, and that as long as you're with your family group, that's one thing, but pickup games of any sorts are really discouraged, just simply from a health point of view. Thank you. Ryan Bell is our next submitter. He's from the Sweetwater County School District No. 1 Transportation Department. His statement: I want to give the guys and gals in the IT department a huge thank you. You guys are amazing. We had some problems with our computers. We filled out the help tags and they were addressed. Thank you guys so much. And the final statement is from Danielle Schumacher, who is a parent. And there are several questions in this one, so we'll go through it and answer them as best we can. Is there an update on the homeschool, the time frame it will last, how the students are doing academically and through participation, how the teachers feel it is going, any insight on when it will be over, whether consideration for those not in a safe environment are being considered, whether parents are home with the younger student population or still having to work, how the district plans to deal with the setback of not having students in the classroom and falling behind, what the future plans are for assessing students for placement next year if they aren't able to catch up from this. That's a bunch of questions. Would you like to address it, Superintendent?
Sure. Lots of questions on this one, but I know that they're in the hearts and minds of not only our parents, but for our students and community as well. The update on homeschooling, what we're calling online learning or e-learning, that's the magical question that everybody would like to know. And unfortunately, we don't have an answer for that for you at this time on how long that will go. For right now, we know that our schools are going to be closed through April 17th. And then we will look to guidance from our governor and also from our state health officer as we determine what is going to be the best and safe plan of action for our staff, students, and community. So far, Our students actually are doing probably a lot better than the adults, it seems like. So with technology, our kids are always up and running a little bit quicker than what we do. And I can speak for myself on that. I'm learning a lot through this process. But for our teachers, they are working extremely hard. They are connecting on those relationship pieces for you, as well as trying to provide instruction in the best way that they can. We know it's new. One of the comments that's come to me is the amount of parent squares or communications in general. And I had mentioned this on Saturday's update to our district, but I think it's important to mention again. I know that there's a lot of communication coming out. It's new and it was very difficult. There was no way to, no one would have thought a couple of months ago that we would be in the situation that we are. But the district implemented a plan from the very beginning. We put that plan in place to support our kids as much as we could and our staff. And we know that in a week from now, the amount of communication, things will streamline and they will slow down. And the week after that, it's going to be decreased even more. So thank you for your patience as we all learn to get this going and up and running. I know it's a hard thing with parents. They work all day or they have shift work in our community. And then at the same note, they're trying to support their kids instructionally as well as be mom and dad. And that's a difficult task for everyone. The question about how does the district plan to deal with the setback of not having students in the classroom? The idea with the adapted learning plan is to not have students fall behind. With online learning, we are going through in our teachers and our PLCs, and we are examining closely the power standards for each grade level or content area. And it's those power standards that we are actually focusing on. What are the essential skills that that student needs before they leave second grade, third grade, or a high school math class per se? So our idea is not to have any students be behind. We don't want any students to fall behind. And we know that our future plans for assessing students for our placement next year, we want to be able to give them the quality education that they would get inside a brick and mortar building, the same way that they would get online in this circumstance. So with that adaptive plan, we have interventions for kids that might need a little extra boost. And we also have enrichments for students that seem to be doing well. It just is going to look a little bit different. And it's online versus inside the classroom as before. Our classroom's a little bit different.
Thank you. And I would also add that the state has waived YTOP for this year, as well as the Department of Education has also waived any assessments until next year. So both of those, there will not be any assessments based on national norms or state norms this year. So it'll be strictly our testing and where we're able to place kids accordingly. And as our philosophy always is, we take the student from where they are to where they need to be. So it'll be starting where they are. Okay, that's all the comments that I have. So we'll move to section number 5, the retention incentive. Approval of a one-time retention incentive for eligible employees. Do you want to address anything on that, Mr. Duncan, or?
Thank you. Sure. This is similar to what we've done in the past. There are a couple of changes which I'll run through. There are 3 requirements to be eligible. One is full-time or part-time as of August 17th, and that's the first day that we have kids. They've completed an online letter of assurance indicating their intent to return, and that letter needs to be submitted by May 15th, which is the last day that the teachers can submit their resignation, and also have completed their first day of employment before April 1st. So that means pretty much anybody that's working for us now would be eligible for this incentive. In terms of the money, it'll be $1,000 per person plus an amount for each year of service to be determined later in May. And that is because we want to make sure our cash is going to hold up for when we get our county treasurer money, the middle of May. And so we know now that we've got 1.65 that's already been set aside in the budget for staff compensation. And we've received also about 700,000 over our budget for the special ed. And that was because it was capped, but there's a mechanism where you can recapture some of your
Right.
out of district tuition and increase in costs. And so that was about 700,000. And we have about 38,000 left over from the sick leave buyout. So that's the
Okay.
pocket of money that we're looking at. We just want to make sure our cash is gonna hold up. And if there's more, then we could certainly go higher.
Okay. All right. Anything else or?
One other thing, new this year, that we are asking people to sign that letter of assurance to refund the district if they don't meet the following criteria. So they sign up for it. They say, I'm going to be back, but for whatever reason, they're paid out and don't come back. Then we're asking them to repay that money. That's new for this year. And also new are the extension of a $500 one-time payment to the long-term substitutes. And these are the ones that helped fill in for the vacant certified teaching positions that we had across the
Beginning of the year.
district. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Could I ask a question real quick?
Mr. Hay?
Yeah, Mr. Duncan, what do you think the retention incentive amount will be? How much will it be?
Are you talking per person or the total dollars? Total pool
Total
dollars?
dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the amount that we've identified now is about 2.38. So that's the 1.65 that's been set aside, the 700,000 for the special ed funding, and then another 38,000 of funds that were not used through the sick leave buyout.
Okay, that's the 38 should be used for the retention then.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And with that information from, we got that extra money, but that's saying that we had everything the same in place for the state as last year. That's not looking at what's going to happen after this coronavirus runs through the state's income. Do we feel good about that?
Well,
That same money's going to be there, or?
Well, at least as of today, the biggest driver are the ADMs, and they've assured us that if we follow our adopted learning plan that's been approved by the state, that they'll hold harmless in terms of the ADM. So I think that part, as long as we do what we say we're going to do, that we should be on pretty safe ground. Of course, things could change, in a heartbeat. But we already have that 1.6 set aside in the current budget year, and we've received that 1.7. There is a chance that the the transportation will be a little bit low because we aren't, making as many activities, trips and whatnot. But I think when everything is all said and done, we're hoping that that cash will still hold up and be able to offer that one-time intention incentive.
But we wouldn't really be expending that transportation money either. I mean, we're expending some because that's how we're taking care of the lunch program, but we wouldn't be expending as much as we would if we were running all the routes.
Well, but to the best of my knowledge, those wages are covered up to their
Okay.
position that they're hired for.
Okay.
So for example, the over-the-road drivers, which are the activity drivers, they would still be compensated for their.
I'm talking about probably the expenses towards gasoline, those kinds of expenses. We probably would not be as high.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman?
to build on Mr. Hayes' question, our reserves are basically capped by the state, right? And we've already maxed out what reserves we're allowed to carry over from year to year.
Yes, we're maxed out at 15%. Yeah, and I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to be above that again this year as well, even with the downturn and possible funding.
which would be the reason that we would be extending an incentive so that we use that money rather than returning it to the state.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was still a use it or
Or lose it.
Mhm.
yeah kind of situation rather than a hey, let's do this to be nice type of situation. So
Well, and I think it's also a thank you to all the staff
Yeah.
that have picked up the slack with all these positions that we were not able to fill and so forth. So a lot of people have picked up varying degrees of extra work. And this is one way of expressing our thanks for doing that. Any other comments? Any other discussion?
I'd move to approve, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Mickelson to approve the one-time retention incentive for eligible employees. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Mr. Jackman. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Item number 6, restoration of frozen steps. Approval to restore 2 frozen experience steps for all current staff that were employed in the district during the 2016-2017 school year and the 2017-2018 school year. In addition, recommend approval for a payment of 1.2% of base salary for current staff topped out on the salary schedule during the 2016-2017 school year and the 2017-2018 school year, if eligible. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Thompson. Discussion. Any discussion? I'd like to comment that, as Mr. Duncan stated in the review of the financial report, this is an approval of the 2 steps for 16-17 and 17-18. We hope, we're keeping our fingers crossed, we're going to try to make it happen to have also at some point later in the year approve the third year and restore all 3 of those steps. But for the time being, this motion is for 2 steps, but it is our hope that we will be able to do the 3rd step before the end of the year. Further comments or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Technology, item number 7. Approval to purchase 600 Cisco Unified Workspace licenses, CUWL, through Converge One. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson,
Second.
second by Mr. Hay. Discussion. Superintendent McGovern, would you like to address that a little bit?
Sure. In this difficult situation that we're faced right now as a district, one of the things that really has helped the district to support our kids is the technology pieces that our IT department has had into play. And we know one thing from experience is with technology and infrastructure, you cannot get behind on that, because when you do, it's so difficult to get back up with the cost of things and also being able to move forward. What this item is on the board agenda for this evening is it actually will solidify the remainder of the school safety efforts that the district is doing. In the current situation, it will provide several things with this software license, but most importantly, it supplies Jabber, which is a virtual phone on all of our computers. So our district staff at this time, while working at home, they would be able to communicate from parents to parents through Parent Square, through email, but they can also pick up the phone and then call parents from a school line. And they would not have to use a personal number per se. In the long run, if and when we get out of the current situation with COVID-19, what these licenses will do is actually bridge our school safety efforts with the pieces that we've put into play for the last 5 years. We've spent minimal dollars. Really, we haven't asked the board for a whole lot with school safety and until this point this evening. But what this does in the long run is it provides a communication tool for all of our staff in their classrooms so that in the event of an incident or an emergency, they have one more communication tool that they could reach out outside of their room. And they could also do the standard response protocol over their phone quietly and quickly throughout the school without having to use an overhead intercom. So it has short-term goals for the district, and it also has long-term goals that would help us move forward.
Thank you. Further discussion on the technology? Any discussion? Hearing none. Okay, there's a motion to approve the purchase of 600 Cisco Unified Workplace licenses through Converge One. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 8, personnel. Approval of personnel recommendations. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mickelson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, we'll go to the addendum, which is also personnel items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. That concludes the items on our special board meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. It is 6:38 p.m.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you to everyone that was in attendance.
Thank you.